Hey, everyone. Welcome to the CyberHub podcast. It's Friday. You know what that means. It's Tech Corner Day. So no practitioner briefs, none of that stuff. But you can go to our website, cyberhubpodcast.com, where you get our practitioner briefs daily. And we have an awesome Tech Corner episode today. You obviously see the man on the screen. You might recognize him because you've seen him in a few trade shows. You might have spoken to him somewhere. You may. But joining me today is the one, the only, Aviv Grafi, founder and CEO of Votiro, one of our great supporters of this podcast. Aviv, welcome to Tech Corner.
Thank you very much, James. Great to be here today.
It's awesome to have you here. I know you're a father again. We've had to postpone this several times, so mazel tov.
Thanks. Yeah, the third time now. Yeah.
Third time's the charm, as they say.
Yeah, that's the third version of my family project. Third release.
Version 3.0.
Yeah.
So, folks who don't know a lot about your background a little bit, before we kind of get started on today's Tech Corner, and we're going to be talking about a lot of things in today's Tech Corner, specifically stuff around, work from home, the redefinition of security, the new attack vectors that are taking place and going on now. So before we get into that a little bit, how'd you get into cyber? I mean, you're obviously from Israel. For those who did not know, Aviv is in Israel. We're doing this. Thank you for technology, for being so amazing. But tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. So I served in the A200 unit. Actually, I was recruited straight from high school after been doing some hacking experience during my high school time. I was working for a few years in the intelligence forces in Israel, and then I started my own business, mainly around penetration testing and audit, and learned actually from that field. And I got to where I am today, launching Votiro and running the company.
So for full disclosure for my awesome listeners, I've known Aviv now for almost 3.5, 4 years.
Yep.
It's been a while, and you're really one of the more quiet, brilliant minds of our industry. And so let's start with this. So COVID has really thrown everything into a spin. This is not a podcast about COVID, folks. So just because we start with COVID doesn't mean we're going to continue on COVID. Don't stop listening. But COVID did kind of change the trends in attacks because most people were working from home. Some people didn't even have company devices. They were working off their home computers. So
Right.
how has that really evolved, and how have you guys seen it? How have you seen it?
Yeah, so that's an interesting trend. Definitely before the COVID, most of our customer prospects and what we've seen in the market, they were not concerned about some of the attacks that we actually see today. In fact, we see that there are a significant increase in phishing and those kind of attacks with bad actors actually leveraging the fact that people actually work from home. We know it's much harder to interact with our colleagues. We're doing that online. We have the kids running around. You might see my kids running. So and when we started that COVID, it was a bit embarrassing, but now it's very natural. So people might get distracted, and the hackers are actually using that. So we see an increase of those kind of attack, leveraging and luring those employees to open kind of malicious URLs and attachments. We see a significant actually spike in those kind of attack.
Yeah, the trend is absolutely spot on with the fact that you're seeing more phishing. It's also changed the discussion around endpoint security and so many other things, but it's really almost, it's interesting, right? Because in Israel, a lot of our listeners know I spent about a month in Israel about a month and a half ago, that I was in Israel, and was very interesting for me because typically, you come to Israel in the summer, it's traffic's everywhere, you can't get anywhere. So many people out in the streets. This has really kind of changed it. because most people are working from home, and it's really kind of redefined the revolution of work from home, right? It's forced us to do something that maybe a lot of us weren't willing to make a bet on, right? Which is, can my company still be effective without having people come into work? How has that been for you as a CEO of a company? When this whole thing started, obviously, you know, you've got 2 kids at home. Your idea of going into the office, that was your sanity. So how did you deal with it, and how did your company actually deal with the fact that you guys were working from home? How does that really enhance productivity, change the way you do business?
So actually, that's a great question. This is one of the main things I'm actually dealing with today in my company. In fact, when the COVID started around March, we had kind of that feeling, say, you know what, tomorrow everyone going to, or next Monday, everyone going to work from home just for one day. Let's practice our systems. And that was a week before we had here the first lockdown. So for us, it was kind of a luck that we had one drill before the real thing. And since March, actually, the entire company is working from home. I can share with you and with the audience that when we started, it was a bit tough. And I think the hardest part is how to manage your time with the family, how to get the sense of working with your colleagues when everyone remote. And it started, I think, on the first 2 weeks, it was counterproductive. But I can definitely see on the last few months, and my team can testify for that, that we get actually more productive than ever. I think the fact that each and every one of the team member can effectively manage his time, understand that there's no traffic, he doesn't need to drive to Tel Aviv in the mornings, he doesn't need to run and 30 kids in the kindergarten and then go to work. It helped people manage their time much better. So I can tell you that we in Votiro, we're officially moving to work from anywhere, not work from home. And in fact, we're not going to have any physical offices starting next month. So in fact, for us, it did a significant change. And I see it as a great opportunity for all of us to be more productive, to be more in control of our time, and to have that balance in much more effective way.
Yeah, it's really redefined that, because it used to be, you know, when I came to Israel and I'd go to meet with companies, come to our office, right? Come meet with us. We want to show you our offices. And this time when I was in Israel, I met in more restaurants and cafes than I would have liked to, right? Like, I'm typically used to going to, you know, Israel, for those who've never been, and if you're in security and you've never been to Israel, you should go. And you can contact me if you want to do a trip to Israel on one of our fly-ins that we take. But you know, you go to a company, you sit down on a meeting room table, there's food, there's drinks, there's just the hospitality, right? Typically, for those who don't know, baked goods, croissants, chocolate cake, you name it. You've got any soda you want, and you've got fruit, and you've got vegetables. Like, the whole spectrum of healthy to you're about to eat 500 calories of a almond croissant on the table, which is my favorite. So for those who want to send me anything, almond croissants always work for me. You can check our website for where to mail it to. But it is absolutely fascinating to hear that you guys are going to go without an office, and you guys aren't, you know, you guys are probably leading the way in that, but a lot of companies are in fact moving away from it. We look at this new reality, right? Organizations are looking remote work. I mean, for you, this isn't a 1-year experiment. This is the way you're going to do business going forward until something significantly changes, and that brings a whole new challenge for the CISO. So how do we redefine security now?
So definitely one of the major challenges is now that training the employees' mind about security is getting a bit harder, because now they're being distracted at homes. They want to focus on productivity, and the security in some way is being pushed aside. So the two things that I see when I'm talking with CISOs that they're doing much better now. One is understand that meetings are going virtual. So some of them are moving to cloud-based solutions. Where we had that long discussion about Zoom and Teams. So productivity is the first thing, and virtual, that's the new thing that they should think about, how to secure that. And I think that the second thing is about the training that is getting much more difficult these days because of the limited attention span of the employees. And we see that actually where they rely more on technology these days, which is getting more important than ever. So if employees were used to just ask their colleagues next to them about something about security, okay, do you have that document for the meeting later today in the conference room? It's not that anymore, because I might be sending you, James, a document as a briefing for the next podcast, and you'll be opening that. I'm not sitting next to you to ask you and discuss this with you. So for hackers, it's being much easier to attack and leverage those kind of new social and new methodology of working together. That's why we see that technology is getting much more important these days to protect from those kind of scams.
Do you see the attack vectors kind of changing into like the Slacks, the Zooms, kind of, the Microsoft Teams, where, you've got the group with a bunch of company documents, a bunch of company IP, a bunch of company information, and if someone just gets their hands in there, they've hit a pot of gold?
Yeah, definitely. We see more and more like that. I can tell you that we're using Slack more than ever. We interact with the external consultants using Slack more than ever. We're opening documents on those kind of platforms more than ever. So I think in our mindset, we open for those kind of technologies, which we need to secure, at least understand where the risks are before securing them, of course. I can also share with you that we see an increase on attacks that faking Zoom invites. For example, I can send you an invitation for a Zoom meeting, and you'll be clicking it right away. You won't find that strange that I'm sending you a Zoom invite. So a lot of new kind of schemes of email that pretend to be something else, we're seeing significant increase in those, and more people are actually likely to open those kind of emails.
Yeah, the challenge is ever, and that kind of brings me up to where the pressure now on the CISO is to streamline security, and he's got to do this in a way without the traditional confines, right, of a network, an environment, an office. So now we're talking about cyber business operation decisions and challenges. Right now, more than ever, cyber's really got to be streamlined within the business operations. So where do you see technology, workflow, and security merge for the CISO? That's the first part of the question. And then my second part is, what can a CISO do to streamline security in their company, in their business, in their organization?
So first, for the first question, it's critical that CISO will be able to streamline security. And particularly today, that's the economic decline. We see how it impacts the cybersecurity budgets within many companies. We understand that we're in an era of cutting costs. But at the same time, we need to keep the business alive. So definitely, I think that this is one of the main challenges. One of the things that I'm seeing in companies and our clients, that the key point that they need to address is how to keep the balance between business versus security. I think that today CISO is not the bad guy. It cannot be the bad guy. You need to allow the employees to get rid of overhead. You need to allow people to work. It cannot add more and more solutions that block the productivity, and which unfortunately we see that some of the security solutions or security mindset is about blocking and stopping and being the bad guy. We believe as a vision, as a mindset, that the CISO should be lovable. It should allow the business productivity. It should allow the employees to work without adding more overhead. And I think this is the main key point. I can give you an example. One of the solutions that you may apply for those kind of phishing scams is blocking and quarantining files that just may be found as threat. But we know that those blocking and quarantine actually affects productivity significantly. If you think of all the time and effort lost when employees are expecting an email, now it's in the quarantine. Now you need to call the IT desk and release that, and all that overhead actually affect the business, and no one wants to have that overhead, especially in these times. So this is one of the things that we encourage CISOs to think how we can streamline the security and allow the employees to work from home and from anywhere actually without stopping that productivity.
Right, but we talk about, and you bring up a really good point, which is how do you find the balance between security and productivity when people are working from home? And early on you brought up a really good point, which is, you know, when you're at home, you've got your family. You know, you warned us that your kids may open the door behind you and run right in and be like, Abba, you know, and so it's that's something that would never happen in an office, right? And in an office, when you're sitting in an office, your head's on your shoulders, you're extremely focused, unless, you know, the kids or wife call you on your cell phone. You're in that mindset of work, but now working from home, you're not in that mindset of work. So how do you start to address that really from a productivity perspective with security, when you know that productivity just isn't the same anymore? Yes, people are more productive, but it's not the similar level of productivity, meaning the way for productivity isn't the same as before. So the way of productivity today for a lot of people could be, I wake up before my family wakes up and I work for 2 hours straight. I answer all my emails, I get all my notes, I get everything, and then I break for a few hours. I make breakfast, I, you know, spend time with my family, get the kids ready to either go to school or do a bunch of activities. And then I go back and I work for a few more hours, and then you know, and people break again. So how do you balance security with that kind of level of, you know, maybe a divided workday and a divided workflow where security kind of falls to the back of mind because now you've got a Zoom call, now you've got other things to do, and you're not really thinking about that phishing attack?
I think that's the main problem, which the CISO need to address in a way that at least it doesn't add overhead to the employee. Because if I'm blocking emails that should go to the guy that need to go out to take his kid to school, he doesn't have time to deal with the IT help desk and release that email. So if we can find solutions, for example, some of the cloud solutions that allow us to connect to the remote network without the overhead, without dealing with more and more people in IT desk and releasing and blocking, quarantining in the way, it can allow me to be productive. It can allow me to really utilize my time efficiently. So in the 1 hour before or the 2 hours after you wake up, before you go to get your kids to school, you need to be focused, not dealing with releasing and stuff that is not related to your actual work. Now, one of the things that you mentioned, that the time is now divided across the day. So I may start with 2 days in the morning, then I have maybe 3 hours afterwards. So this is also goes back to security now, that every employee has now a different profile. So I may be more productive in the evening. So the hacker actually now need to know that evening actually maybe that's the best time to send those emails and not right after lunch when I'm so heavy and I'll be opening those emails without being noticed. So I think both ends actually being changing, both the hackers that need now to address different time schemes, and both security that need to allow me to work in an unusual time. Maybe I cannot really think twice before I'm doing my work because I need to do my work just before I need to take the kids. So I think both ends are being changed now.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the human behavior analytics piece of it is very different. In fact, I can tell you from personal experience as a CISO, when you know I get a weekly network traffic report, right? It's like something I look at every week. It's you know, people ask me why the heck do you do that, James? And I always say, well, I want to see spikes in network traffic. If I see something happening at 2 a.m., I know I have a problem. Right? Like something isn't right. If if I have a really weird spike at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, well, I also want to know what it is. Like network spikes mean something. And so a lot of times, you know, you don't need a fancy report or a fancy system. You just need to really just look at the existing data that you have, as unimpressive as it is, to realize something is not right within your network. Well, since COVID, my network reports look very different from what they used to before COVID, right? So now you have to adjust to specific spikes, and all of a sudden you realize, why was there a spike at 8 p.m.? And then you go, okay, all of these people logged in for a conference call or a happy hour call or something at 8 p.m. for whatever reason, or on a Sunday morning, where all of a sudden you got something on a Sunday morning. And so...
Yeah, so I think the trends and the patterns are getting much harder to be identified and correlated. So I think some of the schemes that we're thinking about finding those anomalies actually being much harder now. So I definitely understand what you're experiencing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a headache. Let's talk about a common problem that has solutions but hasn't been, and I don't understand why it's still happening. Right. So a lot of cyber incidents happen because of start off as a phishing. The phishing could be a link, could be a document, downloads a payload. Technology's there to identify these malicious links and specifically documents. A lot of times this is done through macros enabled on an Excel or a Word document. Why does this still attack vector even exist if it's solved already?
So actually, that's a great question. I think that attack vector still exists because mainly it's cheap and just highly effective for criminals. In fact, one of the things that you can think about is that you can create your own malicious document and deliver that almost to anyone you want in the world by just knowing his email address and what his job title. So that's the reason why it's still there. Now, in addition to that, you mentioned documents and URLs and links. So documents and links, that's the essential tool for organization, essential tool for any business, and the criminals just taking advantage of that. I understand that the problem is that the technology is here of almost 20, 30 years, and still it hasn't been resolved significantly. And I think one of the problems is that we're still thinking in the old ways. Let's try to find those malicious documents. Let's try to find those URLs. And I think this is one of the problems, that the hacker is just faster than us. And this is a cat and mouse game that we need to rethink how we're solving that.
Yeah, I mean, but there's solutions for this, right? I mean, technology already exists out there to identify malicious documents. Office 365, if you use their highest security, program, you're able to create safe links. So essentially, they scan the link, they essentially recreate the link, and they check it to make sure that it's not taking you to some malicious website. So the technology's out there, and yet we still see it every single day. How do we increase awareness to the fact that, hey guys, this problem that everyone goes, oh, I'm dreading that doc. There's ways to solve it. Here's how you do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I think as I mentioned, the problem is that we're trying to chase the unknown. We're trying to detect what we don't know yet. And this is the cat and mouse game that the existing technologies that mainly in the market just cannot cope with. Because if I can, and you can find that on GitHub, you can find tools that can generate thousands of malicious Excel spreadsheets, as you mentioned, macro-enabled one, in minutes. And each and every Excel spreadsheet has a unique hash value. It's a unique, I would say, pattern that no one actually saw before. So those kind of detection technologies, that's their problem, that they cannot really detect what they haven't seen before. What we're seeing, and actually one of the things that we're carrying here in Votiro, is a technology that removed that need to find those threats in order to eliminate that. In fact, one of the things that I encourage everyone to do is to retrain their brain and say, let's not to try the bad stuff, and let's actually deliver the good stuff. I can give you an example. If you have a Word document of a resume, and you can deliver that weaponized Word document to the HR department, they will likely to open that because that's their job, to open documents. But if we take that Word document, that resume, and for every resume that goes in, we just deliver the content, not the actual bits, we can deliver actually the safe version of that document, and everyone can just open it without the need to think twice, and we don't need to participate in that cat and mouse game.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, which is almost, retraining your brain. I'm a fan of automation, right? You often hear the kind of the conversations around, we need to train people. Yes, we need to train people, but technologies already exist. And let's be honest, if you're in accounting, you're more concerned with your balance sheet, with your invoicing systems, with all of that, than you are about security. Now, security is top of mind, but it's not top of mind, right? You're more concerned with your top 5 job functions, and then you're concerned with security. If you're in operations, logistics, if you're in customer support, you're more concerned about helping your customer than you are about security. And this whole idea of, we got to get these people to care about security, I think it's false. I think we got to find the right technology that allows them to streamline their work product while keeping them secure from the traditional threats, and then monitor their behavior online within the confines of, obviously, one, privacy, number 2, work hours, because you and I could, you could monitor people before because you knew that from 8 to 5 they were in your office. Now that's a whole different story. Now that's a whole different challenge altogether, because people don't work from 8 to 5 anymore. People can work from 6 to 8 a.m. and then they can be gone for 2 hours and come back at 10 and work from 10 to 1 and then go for a few more hours and work from 3 to 8, and then they're done for the day. And so monitoring their online behavior now, monitoring the threats that could evolve from the things that they do, has become that much harder. Because at what point are you invading their privacy? At
Yeah,
what point
definitely
are
there
you
is a part.
overstepping?
Yeah, definitely there is the monitoring piece is definitely a bigger concern now that people also working from home. So, I mean, if we decided to work on 3 a.m. After getting back from somewhere, I mean, that's a kind of a problem. And definitely we need to trust our colleagues, we need to trust our employees. And this is part of letting them do their job. And one of the things that we cannot tell them is, think twice before you're doing your job. Think twice before you open a document. Think twice before you open a link. That's kind of a problem that we're trying to, or actually, ask them to take responsibility on security issues. So it's the same thing as not telling them, okay, you need to work on certain hours. So we believe that as we need to trust our employees in one hand, but we don't need to get them involved whether they should open a document or not, and we need to employ technologies actually that to help them do their job. Just open that document. Do not think twice about that. And those kind of technologies exist.
To me, it always comes back to, what can I do to automate the non-security person's role so that they can just do their job and security can run in the background, right? It's so critical, I think, when we talk about new technologies, or when I meet with new technology vendors. If this is something where it's not running in the background, if this is another alert system where, I'm going to get a bunch of, alerts and a bunch of false positives, or just more beacons, more, I won't say more beacons, but more messages. I feel like we're over that period right now. Like,
Yeah.
in a work from home area, you want things to be together. You want things to, you want to be able to give your employees a sense of security no matter where they are. And I also think you got to segment your employees, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, but you need to segment which employees have access to what, and then what level of security each level within your organization needs, right? If it's your executive team, right, like your CEO, your CFO, your CTO, your CIO, they need a different level of security than your call center employee that's answering, emails or calling customers or answering calls from customers who have issues. I don't think it's uniform anymore. I don't think you can do one security for everyone. I think you really, role-based security now plays a bigger role. What do you think?
Actually, the two parts for that question or that topic. One is that I believe that companies and vendors actually should give security, not security tools. I don't want to be distracted by alerts anymore. Actually, I think that most of the CISOs and the tech teams, the security teams, are suffering from that alert fatigue. They cannot take those alerts. Okay, another more alerts, more alerts. They cannot really copy those. And if you think about work from home, if the security team is working from home, how they can really analyze and copy those alerts when they have all those distractions around. So in fact, I believe that we should get less alerts, and as you mentioned, automated processes, or even better than that, security solution that eliminates those alerts. You don't need to be alerted if you get security. You don't need those security tools. So that's one side of that equation. You mentioned about segregation and role-based security. So I think the main problem or the main challenge is how to maintain those roles. So you said maybe the CTO need a different scheme than the help desk. But in fact, what we're seeing is that a significant portion of those attacks actually coming from the help desk. If I'm sending now my help desk team an email saying, I have a problem with my Outlook. Can you please take a look at the attached screenshot? They will open it. They will open it, and that's it. They might be infected. From that point, they can jump through the IT network to a lot of other places. So I'm not sure that there is really justification for having the CTO giving him more, significantly more roles or access than the IT help desk, which is a much more exposed, and eventually they can hit the network as well.
Yeah, you've bring up that's such a really good point, which is even your security team is working remote. Everyone's working remote. There's alert fatigue, automate it. I like your whole spiel about, we need to give people security, not more security tools. I like that. Let's talk a little bit about ransomware. So this last week, Carnival's been hit with ransomware. Jack Daniels distillery, their company Foreman and Brown and Foreman got hit with ransomware. There's CISA and FBI are saying, hey, we're seeing more ransomware now more than ever. Ransomware starts with either a open server somewhere. You've left a door open somewhere that shouldn't have been left open, or you've opened a document or clicked on a link that you shouldn't have. How do you start to defend from ransomware now? How do you start combating this disease?
So I think ransomware is just the outcome of a successful attack. I mean, once something goes through that, I'm sure that the audience are familiar with the kill chain by Lockheed Martin. So you have that phases of every successful attack. So the delivery, that's the heart where the attacker actually relying on one specific thing. So what I believe is that if we can tackle the delivery phase, say, for example, that link or email or document that being sent to that victim, if we can stop at that stage, we don't have to worry about that ransomware afterwards. So, as you mentioned, it might be a link, it might be a document that we need to focus on protecting through those kind of stages, because after the installation, after the document was opened, after the macro, for example, was executed, in my view, that's a game over, because we cannot really deal and we cannot really participate in that cat and mouse game. So protecting from the delivery phase, from the emails that are coming in, from the links that are coming in, from the Slack documents being shared, I believe this is the way to tackle that problem. And you're right. This is the main threat that we're seeing and the main hit on companies and enterprises around the world.
Yeah, I mean, ransomware is just continually continues to increase, and it's more effective. And there's really and now when they threaten to leak data, they tend to hold you hostage even more. And we think about this and we go, wow, these guys, it's business for them, right? It's a business deal. A lot of people now look at ransomware as a part of business, and that kind of that's troubling a bit, but nonetheless it's there. when you view kind of the you talked about the Lockheed Martin kill chain. So you looked at the Lockheed Martin kill chain, you look at the ransomware attacks, and you look at the successful execution of a ransomware attack. Are you in favor of paying or not?
I'm not in favor of paying. If you need to pay, that's too late. And I don't think that we should encourage those organizations, actually, those hacking organizations. So I'm not in favor of paying. No.
Great. So, Aviv, as we kind of wrap up this podcast, and it's we've kind of gone a little bit all over the place, I'd like to think, but tell us a little bit about Votiro and your guys' mission and what you guys do while you're doing that.
Yeah. So we in Votiro, in terms of my vision, is to allow our customers, our employees, in fact, every organization, to be free of those threats, of those email threats, of those link threats that you mentioned. In fact, we see a future when an email can be opened without being worried what's inside, and every file can be downloaded or uploaded, because now the new threat of documents being outed to client-facing portals when we're all going digital. So the thing that we're changing in terms of the mindset is that instead of looking for bad stuff, instead of trying to detect, we're saying, let's stop that. Let's actually allow just the safe content. So for every email, every file, you just single out only the safe content, delivering that in a way that the user won't experiencing any change. In fact, we're not blocking any documents. We don't need to quarantine anything. We're just allowing them to work. We believe that business or security need to allow business, to enable business, and not to stop business, and not to be the cup. That's what we believe in. On the last few years, when we actually grew significantly, we started from Israel, obviously. We have offices in Singapore, in Australia, in Israel, and of course in New York. We have hundreds of customers, mostly enterprises, mid-sized enterprises, that protecting their email traffic and client-facing upload traffic, and allowing their employees to open any document without the need to think twice. This is the main value. We allow them both security and productivity, reducing the need to actually compromise on one of those.
Perfect. Well, folks, I'm going to share something on the screen here. It's a really cool. You've seen it in our stuff before, but Votiro has a really cool webinar about how FedEx, UPS, and DHL went through a phishing campaign that evaded essentially their entire security defenses, including AV, next gen AV, and sandboxing. And so you'll see it on the screen here, but the link is below in the description. You should sign up and watch this webinar. I saw it. It was fascinating to see how well those phishing attacks were executed, how malicious the files were. It's becoming easier for them to make believable phishing campaigns. They're not making the same spelling mistakes. They're hiring copywriters, guys. They're going on Fiverr. They're hiring a copywriter. They're saying, make me an email. They're not doing it themselves anymore, and they're getting a lot better. What do you think, Aviv?
Yeah, so definitely we see all that increase. Everyone now shipping stuff to their houses, actually, because of the COVID-19. So definitely we see that increase. I think one of the great things that they actually have been doing, those hackers, is really crafting great emails. And I must say that it's very easy to be fooled and clicking those and open those attachments. And it was really fun to actually take these attacks, actually documents in our lab. And I really hope that the audience can learn from that, and our research team as well.
Awesome. Well, folks, you can actually see the link to the webinar. If you're listening, go to cyberhubpodcast.com. If you're watching us on YouTube, or if you're listening on any audio platform, the link is below in the description of this podcast. You can click there, but you can also go to our website. You can sign up for our newsletters, register. Also, make sure you subscribe, give us 5 stars. Let us know what you think. If you got questions for Aviv, you can also reach out to him. He is also linked below to his LinkedIn profile, so you guys can touch base with him as well there. That's it for our Tech Corner this week. Aviv, thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. And thank you for supporting our podcast.
Thank you very much, James. It was a pleasure being here today, and have a great and be safe, of course.
Absolutely, folks. So as we wrap up, we're wrapping up another magnificent week here. We got so much more stuff coming up next week. It's going to be off the chains. Make sure you subscribe. Our practitioner brief, we're going to have some stuff that's going to be coming from several of we have several really cool stories that we're bringing you next week that you guys are going to absolutely love. Part of kind of a new series. Also, if you're not a subscriber on our YouTube channel, go and subscribe to our YouTube channel, because I'm starting kind of like a daily 30-minute vlog here in the next few weeks. And we're really going to be talking about a wide range of issues, not just cyber, but we can talk about equality, we can talk about sports, a bunch of stuff, not just beyond security talk all the darn time. So you can go to our YouTube page, subscribe. It's going to be a live stream on YouTube. Ask questions, interact, do whatever you want to do. Well, don't do everything you want to do, but just, join the conversation and be part of that discussion beyond cyber. We'll talk about security, but I don't know, but Aviv doesn't have to go through this. Obviously, in Israel, they don't have to do the same stuff we're dealing with here. We're right before a presidential election in the States, and I found myself getting about 17 phone calls a day from people telling me what's Russian propaganda, what's Chinese propaganda, what's Iranian propaganda. And so I've decided to start a vlog on our YouTube channel, CyberHub Podcast. You can go there, subscribe. If you're watching us now, make sure you subscribe, turn on your alerts. Every time I go live, you'll get an alert. You can join in the discussion, different topics every time we do this. We'll talk a little bit about election security, with the idea of making this simple enough so that the average person can understand it, so that they vote any way they want to vote, but also educate themselves in the process to make sure that they're not being misled to vote a different way than what their principles lead them to do so. So that's it for us here today, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. James Azar, the one, the only Aviv Grafi on today's Tech Corner. Make sure you subscribe, give us 5 stars. And until next week, I'll be back on Monday. But until then, folks, first of all, stay cyber safe. Shabbat shalom. See you guys. Love you. Take care.